Kendra Weston was the life of the party online, flaunting designer dresses and rooftop cocktails, while her 15-year-old daughter Ava sat alone in a sweltering Florida home with no power, no food, and no way out until one small noise outside the window exposed a secret life of neglect, fraud, and a plan to disappear forever. In the quiet suburbs of Clearwater, Florida, neighbors had grown used to seeing 15-year-old Ava Weston walking home from school alone. Her frame was thin, her steps slow, and her face often pale under the Florida sun. She never carried much, just a worn backpack that looked several years old. She didn't join after-school activities, didn't linger to chat with classmates, and rarely smiled. Her clothes were clean but faded, and her shoes had frayed laces that looked ready to snap. Behind closed doors, Ava's life was far from the ordinary suburban image her street portrayed. Her mother, Kendra Weston, was known for her love of attention, especially online. She posted glamorous selfies in carefully chosen outfits, striking poses in front of hotel mirrors, always with a cocktail or expensive coffee in hand. To her hundreds of followers, she looked like a confident, carefree single mom living her best life. The reality was far less polished. Kendra's priorities were rarely at home, and Ava often spent evenings alone, eating microwave noodles and reading library books by the dim glow of a desk lamp. One Friday in early May, Kendra's excitement reached a fever pitch. She had been talking for weeks about a trip to Las Vegas, her big escape from the dull routines of Florida. She posted videos of her manicured nails tapping against shiny suitcases, captions promising a weekend to remember. That morning, she left Ava with no money, no groceries beyond a half-empty box of cereal, and a single instruction: don't cause trouble. There was no mention of who to call in an emergency, no food delivery left behind, and no neighbors asked to check in. When Kendra boarded her flight, she didn't think about the old house where Ava would be sleeping alone. She didn't think about the broken window in the back bedroom covered with a taped trash bag, or the fact that the air conditioner had been broken for weeks in the sweltering Florida heat. By the time the sun set that first night, the house was already stifling. Ava opened the front door to let in some air, but it brought only the smell of damp earth and the faint buzz of mosquitoes. In the kitchen, dishes were stacked in a deep, sticky sink, some with mold beginning to form. She retreated to her room, clutching a flashlight because the overhead bulb had burned out months ago. Somewhere outside, a dog barked in the distance. Inside, the silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling. Ava had no way of knowing that the coming days would turn her quiet misery into a public scandal that would shock the entire state. By Sunday night, Ava had been alone for nearly 3 days. The air inside the house was thick and unmoving, making it hard to breathe without feeling sticky and restless. At first, she had rationed what little food there was: dry cereal without milk for breakfast, a pickle or two for lunch, and tap water from the kitchen sink. By the second day, the power shut off with a sudden, hollow click, leaving her in silence except for the low hum of insects outside. The refrigerator was now useless, and the small carton of milk inside had turned sour, releasing a pungent odor that spread through the kitchen. She tried to keep herself distracted, flipping through the same worn library book she had already read twice, but the words blurred together in the dim light of her flashlight. Each hour seemed to stretch longer than the last, and the emptiness of the house made every creak of the wooden floors feel like a warning. By the afternoon of the third day, Ava began to feel lightheaded. The heat pressed against her like a heavy blanket, and she found herself sitting on the cool tile of the bathroom floor just to avoid fainting. Black mold clung to the grout lines around the bathtub, and a damp smell filled the small room. She glanced at her phone, the screen dim from low battery, and saw only 5% remaining. She thought about calling someone, a friend, maybe even a teacher, but the fear of Kendra's anger held her back. Her mother had always made it clear, their problems stayed in the family, no matter what. That night, as the sky outside turned deep blue and the street lamps flickered on, Ava heard a faint noise near the kitchen window. At first, she thought it was just the usual, the scratching of rats or raccoons that had long claimed the outside walls as their own. But this sound was different. It was deliberate, careful, as if someone was trying not to be noticed. She froze, listening, her heart thudding in her chest. The scratching stopped, replaced by the faint crunch of gravel under footsteps. She moved quietly to the front of the house, peeking through the blinds, but saw only the dim glow of the street and the shadow of an overgrown bush. What Ava didn't know was that this noise was the first sign that someone had noticed her situation, and that her isolation was about to draw the attention of people far beyond her neighborhood. The sound outside the window hadn't been an animal at all. It was Mrs. Harlow, the elderly widow who lived 2 houses down, making her way across the overgrown side yard with slow, careful steps. She had grown suspicious after noticing that the Weston house had been dark for days and that Ava hadn't been seen leaving for school or walking to the corner store. Mrs. Harlow had always thought something seemed off about Kendra, too much glamour online and too little presence in her own neighborhood. That evening, as she drew closer, the smell coming from the cracked kitchen window made her wince. It was a mix of rotting food, mildew, and something sour she couldn't quite place. When she finally peered inside, she saw Ava sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, her hair matted with sweat. The sight made her heart lurch. Without hesitation, Mrs. Harlow returned home and called the police. She kept her voice steady as she reported a possible case of child neglect, careful to give the address and explain the urgency. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car rolled up, headlights washing over the front porch. The officers knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Ava, startled by the sudden noise, stayed silent at first, unsure if she should respond. When they called her name, she opened the door just enough for them to see her pale face. The moment they stepped inside, the full extent of the situation became clear. Trash was scattered across the living room floor, empty cans and fast food wrappers stacked in corners. Insects buzzed around the sink, where a thick layer of grime coated the dishes. The mattress in Ava's room was stained and sagging, surrounded by clothes piled on the floor. The smell was overpowering, and the air felt damp and stale. The officers quickly realized this wasn't just a matter of an untidy home, it was unlivable. Ava was weak, her hands trembling as she tried to explain she hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. They escorted her outside into the fresh air, where paramedics were waiting. As she was led toward the ambulance, neighbors began to gather, whispering among themselves. Most had believed Kendra was a devoted single mom who simply enjoyed a glamorous lifestyle. None of them imagined that Ava had been left to survive in such conditions. But the real shock was still ahead. This rescue was only the surface of a much larger and darker story that had been quietly building behind the scenes for months. When authorities began searching for Kendra to inform her of Ava's condition, they quickly discovered she wasn't just on a short weekend trip. Flight records revealed that she had booked her Las Vegas getaway weeks in advance, paying entirely in cash. Digging deeper, investigators uncovered that the cash had come from fraudulent credit card transactions. Victims included neighbors, coworkers from a past job, and even acquaintances she had met through local social media groups. The purchases ranged from expensive electronics to luxury beauty products, many of which she had sold online for quick profit. This was not a single impulsive act. Kendra had been living off stolen money for nearly a year, leaving a trail of financial damage across multiple counties. Her Vegas trip was no ordinary vacation. Surveillance footage from the Las Vegas Strip showed her hopping between high-end boutiques, gambling tables, and rooftop parties, always with different people. She wasn't there to relax, she was networking with others involved in the same kind of fraud she had been running in Florida. Bank records revealed large cash withdrawals from casinos, suggesting she was laundering stolen funds through gambling. But the most alarming discovery came when they searched her Clearwater home for evidence. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a binder filled with stolen identities, names, social security numbers, and bank details for over 50 individuals. The pattern was clear. This trip to Las Vegas was her final move before vanishing completely. Investigators found a one-way ticket from Las Vegas to Cancun scheduled for the following Monday morning. Alongside the ticket, there were fake passports with her photo under different names, and $18,000 in cash neatly packed in an envelope. Authorities coordinated with airport security, and just hours before her flight, Kendra was arrested at McCarran International Airport. She was wearing a designer dress and carrying multiple suitcases, one filled entirely with new clothes and accessories, still with price tags attached. When she was taken into custody, she showed little concern for her daughter's well-being, focusing instead on asking about her seized belongings. The neglect charges were only the beginning. Prosecutors quickly added counts of identity theft, credit card fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. As the case unfolded, it became clear that Kendra had built her glamorous online persona not just to boost her ego, but as a cover for the illegal life she had been carefully constructing. The neglect of Ava was not an accident, it was collateral damage in her mother's pursuit of a life built entirely on lies and stolen wealth. The trial that followed became one of the most talked about cases in the county. Reporters crowded the courthouse steps each morning, eager to capture updates on the woman whose social media painted a picture of luxury while her teenage daughter was left to survive in squalor. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors laid out the evidence with methodical precision. They showed photographs of the home as officers had found it, trash covering every surface, mold climbing the bathroom walls, and insects crawling near the food in the kitchen. These images were paired with hospital records detailing Ava's condition when she was rescued: dehydration, weight loss, and signs of long-term malnutrition. The jury could see the stark contrast between the reality Ava endured and the glamorous photos Kendra had been posting from Las Vegas just hours before her arrest. Witnesses were called one by one. Victims of Kendra's fraud spoke about drained bank accounts, ruined credit scores, and months of financial stress. Former acquaintances testified that she often bragged about knowing how to get money without working, but few had taken her seriously until now. Investigators explained how her online activity and travel records matched patterns commonly seen in organized identity theft operations. The binder of stolen identities, the counterfeit passports, and the stash of cash left little room for doubt about her intentions. Throughout the proceedings, Kendra remained detached, rarely showing emotion. At one point, she even smirked, while her own daughter's living conditions were described in detail. Ava did not attend the trial. She had been placed in a foster home and was receiving counseling. Her absence was noticeable, but the silence surrounding her spoke volumes about the damage done. When it came time for the jury to deliberate, the decision was swift. After less than 4 hours, they returned with a guilty verdict on all charges: child neglect, abandonment, identity theft, multiple counts of fraud, and conspiracy. The judge, noting the deliberate nature of her actions and the clear disregard for her child's safety, handed down a sentence of 25 years in state prison. The case left a lasting mark on the community. Neighbors who once admired Kendra's apparent success now spoke of feeling deceived. The story became a chilling reminder that the images seen online rarely reveal the full truth. Behind the designer dresses, sparkling cocktails, and smiling photos was a trail of exploitation, lies, and the quiet suffering of a child left behind. For Ava, the road ahead would be long, but at least it would no longer be walked alone in a house filled with shadows.